Welcome back. So today we're going to talk about the 39th poem of Catullus, which is actually found on page 152 of your book. At least the first, 14 lines or so. There are a few additional lines which your book does not print, but on the handout that you received, I think you see that the last four lines are translated there for you. And you can probably see why your book didn't print them. I don't know why. It's like the best part of the poem. But anyway, so kind of keeping in line with sort of the narrative genre of poetry. And this poem really kind of is sort of half narrative, but also more of just a character description. Very soon, probably next class, we're going to sort of transition into something called lyric poetry. And so maybe this is sort of a good transitional piece because part of it sort of gives you situations in which you might imagine this character Ignatius. So it's sort of narrative, but at the same time it's not strictly narrative like On Jupiter Place was, or the 53rd poem of Catullus, or the poem that you read on an Acura Integra in English. So anyway, this is again sort of a witty and funny poem, and let's just dive into it. So first things first, remember, read each sentence in Latin aloud. So let's just take the first sentence. Ignatius quod candidos habet dentes renidet usque quaque. So let's read it again. Ignatius quod candidos habet dentes renidet usque quaque. And remember, we're always looking at words that might start a clause. We're looking at the endings of words, trying to figure out how the sentence flows together. Well, looking at this, the first thing I'm going to ask is that we bracket off any clauses. Do we see any clauses here? And I think the answer is yes. Quod, qui quae quod, or quod meaning because, we're not really sure which one yet, starts off a little clause. And where does this clause end? Will use your punctuation. It's really helpful. It ends right here. Okay, quod candidos habet dentes. Just within this clause, what is my verb? There is a verb in the clause. Do you see it? I bet you do. It's habet. Oops, that's not good. No. Hold on. There we go. Okay. I'm choosing sort of yellow as the verb color. Okay, so we have a verb. Now looking in that clause, let's take a look at the other two words. Candidos dentes. Look at the endings of those words. They have noun endings, os and ace. Where do you see os and ace? Well, think about your song. The accusative plural goes as, os, ace. So hey, those words are going to be some sort of accusative direct object. So I'm going to highlight those in kind of this accusative color, whatever it is. I'm not really sure. Kind of looks gray. It's probably blue. I don't know. Anyway, so that takes care of the clause itself. So now we're left with Ignatius renidet usque quaque. That's the main independent thought of the sentence. Well, who looks nominative? Do we see a nominative? Well, we sure do. It's this guy, Ignatius. Whoever he is, he's the subject. What is the verb? Do we see any verb endings on any of these three words? Renidet, usque, quaque. You could probably guess, as I'm sure you already have, that the verb is renidet, right here. That's the main verb of the first sentence. So, doing it this way, I know it may seem tedious, but once again, you've kind of drawn a roadmap without even looking up any of the words. Now, I'm going to ask you, before we start to translate the entire sentence, I want you to look at this word quod for a minute. What is it describing? Or is it describing anything? Quod can be one of two things. It can be neuter, nominative, singular, as a relative pronoun, meaning which, or quod can mean because. If quod means which, it needs to describe something, an antecedent that came before. Is Ignatius a neuter nominative noun? And the answer is no. He is a masculine noun. So quod cannot mean which, therefore it must mean because. So, looking at this, you can look at the words that are glossed for you on page 152, and then it becomes fairly simple at this point, because they do tend to gloss quite a number of words for you at first in these poems. That'll change, of course, over time. So we have Ignatius, because he has gleaming white teeth, grins or smirks, however you want to translate that, on every possible occasion. That's what usque quaque means. Because he has gleaming white teeth, grins on every possible occasion. Is there anybody that you know in your life that's always smiling and is kind of vaguely irritating? I know some people like that. Indeed. Oh boy. Okay, now let's keep going. Now here's where the situations start happening. Si ad rei ventum est subselium, cum orator excitat fletum, renidet ille. Let's just stop there. Si ad rei ventum est subselium, cum orator excitat fletum, renidet ille. So, looking at the words, the entire sentence here, do we see any words that might indicate the beginning of a clause? And you might have noticed cum, probably right away, is going to start a clause. Where does it end? Well, it ends right here. Again, letting our commas do our work for us. Now the word si means if. So that tells me that's probably going to start off a clause as well, because when you think about it in a conditional statement, if this, then that, if this is a dependent clause, right? It can't stand by itself. So where does it end? Well, it ends right here. Once again, let your commas help you out. So we have two clauses that begin the sentence, and then we have renidet ille, which tells us that our independent thought so far is only contained in these two words, renidet and ille. One of those is a verb. Well, it's the same verb that we saw just 2 lines earlier. It's right here, renidet. And what's nominative? What is our subject? That would be ille, right here, meaning that guy, referring, of course, to Ignatius. So, looking at the clauses, let's start with the si clause. What's our verb here? We see est. Do we see anything else that might go with it? How about ventum? Ventum est. Now there is a prepositional phrase here, and what's odd about this, is that the preposition odd, the object of the preposition is several words away, and that can be a little confusing. But this is fairly typical in Catullus and, in fact, a lot of Roman poetry in general. So odd is the preposition. I'm going to underline it there. Oh gosh, that's terrible. Sorry. And then the object is way down here at subselium. Okay? And then that leaves the word rei, which, as your book tells you, reus is a defendant. That's a second declension noun, and this is genitive singular. Okay? Now, how about this? Cum orator excitat fletum. In that circumstantial clause, what is the verb? Probably have spotted it already. The verb is excitat, right there. Who's the subject of this cum clause right here? Do we see a nominative noun? You probably do, and that would be orator, the speaker, right? Okay. All right, so now that we have sort of pieced everything together, and again using the glosses on page 152, let's go for it. So if, and you'll notice that ventum est, your book translates it as people have come, and literally there has been an arrival, because ventum, if you'll notice, ventum est is singular. So if there has been an arrival, ad subsellium, at the bench of a defendant. In other words, when people come to court to watch a case. So if people have come to the bench of a defendant, cum orator excitat fletum, when the speaker, the lawyer, is rousing everybody up, excitat is rousing up fletum. Fletum means weeping or tears. So when that happens, renidet ille, that guy smirks, smiles, whatever you want to say. Wow. So there he is, Egnatius, smiling in an inappropriate context at a case when the pleader is, the prosecutor, if you will, is arousing tears and weeping in everyone else. Moving on. Si ad pi rogum fili lugetur orba cum flet unicum mater renidet ille. You'll probably notice some nice symmetry, because what does this next part of the sentence start with? Well, it starts with another si clause, goes to lugetur, that's a verb, and then it's followed, just like the previous one, by a cum clause, ending at mater, and then it ends with the same two words, renidet ille. So pretty cool there for Catullus to do that. So, oops, no, don't do that. Okay. So renidet there is the verb, and ille, once again, is the subject. Now, in the si clause, what word looks like a verb? You guys have probably figured it out already. It is lugetur. And in the circumstantial clause, which of those other four words looks like a verb? It is flet. Now, just like with this clause up in line 2, si ad, similarly, you've got ad, the preposition, in line 4, and then once again the object of the preposition, though, is separated a few words away. So we're going to draw ad here and rogum there. And just as rei was genitive singular, so would pe and fili be as well. And I'll just choose a different color here for them. These two words are genitive singular, and this adjective pius, meaning devoted, goes with fili, meaning son. All right, so we're good there. Now, look in this circumstantial clause here. Is there any word that looks nominative to you? It's probably really easy to spot, seeing as how you learn this word, in like stage 1 of Latin 1. So, hope you all would see that mater is the subject there. So she'll be in orange, and orba is a word, an adjective that is describing her. Okay, so the first part of the sentence, oh my gosh, even if a lawyer is arousing tears in people, what's Egnatius doing? He's smiling. And then, what about this next one? Look at, again, page 152, and look at your the glosses. Look at lugetur, mourning is in progress. If mourning is in progress at the funeral pyre of a devoted son, when the bereaved mother weeps unicum for her one and only, what's Egnatius doing? Still, he smirks or smiles. Wow. Okay. Now look at the next sentence. Quid est, ubi cumque est, quod cumque aget, renidet. Hunc habet morbum, neque elegantem ut arbitror, neque urbanum. One more time. Quid est, ubi cumque est, quod cumque aget, renidet. Hunc habet morbum, neque elegantem ut arbitror, neque urbanum. Okay, so looking at the first little bit here, quid est, ubi cumque est, and quod cumque aget, you have some nice symmetry there. And then you have, once again, our favorite verb of this entire poem is renidet. So whatever is going on, what's he doing? He's smirking, he's smiling. So what does quid est mean? Quid, you probably remember, means whatever, and of course you know what est means. So whatever it is, and wherever he is, and quod cumque aget, whatever he is doing, he smiles, he laughs. Look at this next part. Hunc habet morbum. Just in those 3 words, do we have a verb? You probably see it right off the bat. It's habet. And hunc is going to describe morbum. So here's where Catullus tells us something interesting about Ignatius. He says, hunc habet morbum. He has this illness. Neque elegantem, neither elegant, as I think, nor urbanu is a hard word to translate. It literally means urbane, sort of like of the city, meaning refined or cultured or something like that. So he has this illness, neither elegant, as I think, nor refined. And moving on, he says, quare monendum est te mihi bone Ignati. So you might notice right off the bat here, with bone Ignati, Catullus is going to address Ignatius directly. He calls him good Ignatius. He says, therefore, now where's my verb here? You probably see est right off the bat, but there's something else that is going with est, and it's right in front of it. Monendum est. Now, you probably remember from last year, when a verb ends in nd, it's either a gerund or a gerundive. But when it's followed by a form of sum s est, it's always a gerundive, and that has a special term. It's called a passive periphrastic. And remember, the translation is always must be verbed, or must has to be. The word must has to be in the translation. And with passive periphrastics, if you'll recall, the person who is doing this, performing this action, is always written in the dative case. So we have mihi right here. So he says, therefore, good Ignatius, I must warn you or advise you. What's he going to advise him of? We don't know yet. It's coming up in the next few lines. Literally, the most literal translation would be, therefore, good Ignatius, it must be warned with respect to you by me. But that sounds tortured, so just say, I must advise you. Think about it like that. I must warn you. And now, here's what he's going to warn you, or warn him of, or advise him of, really. Si urbanus esses, aut Sabinus, aut Tibors, aut Penguis umber, aut Obesus Etruscus, aut qui libet, qui puriter la with dentes, tamen renidere usque quaque te nolem. So, one of the things you probably notice right off the bat is lots of proper nouns here. And the word si, meaning if. So Catullus is going to give us a sort of a hypothetical situation. Well, really not giving us, but rather giving Ignatius a hypothetical situation. Now, the si clause starts here, and it goes, well, it's hard to say. Really kind of goes all the way here to nolem. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, we haven't talked about conditional statements yet, so I'm just going to tell you that the best way to translate these, you know that ss and nolem are both, since they are infinitives followed by a present tense ending, they're imperfect subjunctive. When you have an imperfect subjunctive in the if clause and an imperfect subjunctive in the then clause, it's translated as were ... would. So he says here, if you were urbanus, somebody who was refined, or a Sabine, or from Tibur, or Penguis umber, a fat Umbrian, or Obesus Etruscus, or a fat Etruscan, or anybody at all. And now look at this. We have another little clause. Qui puriter lavit, sorry, that's a typo. It should be a V there. Who. Now, do we have a verb inside this clause? Sure do. Lawit. Think about the word lava that comes from this. If you were anybody at all who washed their teeth puriter, decently or with clean water. So even if you wash your teeth with clean water and did it the right way, which should tell you that something is coming up at the end about the fact that Ignatius really likes to show off these sparkling white teeth, and he's doing something kind of bizarre and how to clean them. So even if you were anybody at all who cleaned his teeth the right way, who washed his teeth decently or with clean water, nevertheless, I would not want you to smile on every possible occasion. For, that means for, risu inepto res ineptior nulla est. Risu inepto res ineptior nulla est. Do we have a verb in this part? Of course. It's our good friend est, so it's right there. What word looks nominative? You know it has to be singular, because est is singular. So take a look. And it's the word res. Res is feminine. Is there a nominative feminine adjective also here? And you probably see that it is nulla. So res nulla, which literally means not anything, meaning nothing. Now, ineptior, what kinds of adverbs end in IOR? Those would be comparative, okay? And your book defines what ineptior means. It comes from ineptus, which means silly. And you see that inepto is used here. Inepto and risu look ablative. So those words are ablative. There's no by, with, from, and on preposition in front of it, so you have to just make one up depending on the context, but actually you don't. These are called ablatives of comparison, as you recall way back from Latin 2, because ineptior is comparative. Therefore, something is blanker than a silly laugh. All right. So moving back just a little bit, if you were a refined person or a Sabine or a man from Tibur or a plump Umbrian or a fat Etruscan or anyone at all who washed his teeth in a pure way, nevertheless, I would not want you to smile on every possible occasion, for not anything, meaning nothing, is sillier than your silly laugh. And that's the end of the Latin that you're responsible for. And then, of course, as you read through the last few lines that I passed out in class, you see what it is exactly that he is doing to his teeth to make them so shiny. And it's gross. And to somebody like Catullus and Romans, they also would have considered that to be really, really just disgusting. So here we go, Catullus making fun and mocking somebody else, and just think about that as we read a couple of other poems in the next few days as well. And think it back to Marshall that you read last year. Okay, thank you. See you next time.